What is good, everybody? It's your boy Sanjit back at it with another video. Today we are looking at a very interesting mock draft that dropped by Pro Football Focus literally this morning, and it's very exciting for me because not only do we get 4 defensive tackles in the first round in this mock draft, but we also get an offensive tackle who up until today has been primarily mocked in the second to third rounds, and for the first time we get a guy from Pro Football Focus who mocks him in the first round. Let's get right into it. Kind of interesting, just to start this off right away, the Texans are apparently going to jump up and they're going to trade with the Chicago Bears, and that's kind of interesting if you guys think about it, because the Texans just needed to tank and they would have had that first overall pick, but now they're likely going to have to give up at least an additional first round pick, maybe next year, maybe the year after, maybe multiple second round picks. We'll see what ends up happening. But if the Texans want Bryce Young, they're going to have to pay for it, because the alternative is another team is going to trade up. Now, I love Bryce Young. Great pocket presence, can make his reads left to right, right to left. Very good with his vision. The guy has a good arm, good accuracy, good ball placement. Obviously, his size is the biggest concern, especially with kind of what's happened to a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, who really hasn't been able to hold up. You look at a guy like Lamar Jackson over the last 2 weeks, and I know Bryce Young isn't Lamar Jackson, but generally speaking, you know, you get these smaller quarterbacks kind of getting hurt a little bit more often. And Bryce Young isn't those guys, right? They're all three of them are completely different guys, but people are going to worry a little bit about the size. Now, does that mean he doesn't go #1 overall? I don't think so. I think Bryce Young is still the #1 overall pick in this class. Will be the Texans, according to this mock draft? Absolutely. #2, the Chicago Bears get Jalen Carter. Here's the thing. If the Bears don't trade that #1 overall pick, they should take Carter no matter what. Jalen Carter is the only thing, in my opinion, that's a sure thing in this class, because the guy's a beast, man. The guy's a superstar. Very good hands, very explosive, very quick. And we've talked about this guy so much at this point. I even dropped a film breakdown on my other channel of Carter. The guy's different, man, and we've kind of seen it since last year. And isn't it crazy that Georgia had not only Jalen Carter, but Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, and Trayvon Walker, not to include guys like Nolan Smith, who might be a first-round pick this year. That's a crazy defensive line, right? That was a starting defensive line last year. It's insane. But Jalen Carter goes #2 to the Bears. The Cardinals get Will Anderson. I truly believe this, that the Arizona Cardinals want Will Anderson over even Jalen Carter, and I think it helps them out so much. Not that they're bad when it comes to pass rush. They just don't have a solid group of guys, young guys that they can look forward to. But they do have pieces on the defense, right? You got Budda Baker, one of the best safeties in the NFL. Then you got Isaiah Simmons, definitely took a step upwards last year. Obviously, this will be his year to really break out. And then you have Will Anderson, who, let's be honest, the guy's potential is through the roof. Some people are saying he's a little overrated, and I totally disagree with that. Will Anderson, in my opinion, is not overrated at all. And I know why that narrative starts. It's because people are so high on Jalen Carter. But Will Anderson has so much going for himself. He does have good technique, in my opinion. Maybe not as great as some guys that we've seen in the past. But Will Anderson definitely has good hand technique. And on top of that, he's very explosive, very quick side to side. He's the guy, man, that I would want in this class. If it's not Jalen Carter. Absolutely beast. #4, you got the Indianapolis Colts, who take a quarterback in Will Levis. What do you guys think about that, man? That's kind of interesting. Levis goes 4th overall. Keep in mind that's before CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson. Although a lot of people kind of have that as that's how it's being projected. I just don't know, right? I've watched Will Levis and I get it. People say his 2021 tape is better than the 2022 tape. And quarterbacks are very hard to really get right. You look at a guy like Josh Allen, where he was in college versus what he is now. Brock Purdy's another example of that. I just don't know with Will Levis, right? I really don't know. Now, obviously, I will say this. The one thing I will say with his 2021 tape is he looked way more pro-ready. He looked way more comfortable running that style of offense. And keep in mind, he did have a change of scheme on the offensive side. It was more pro-ready in 2021. In 2022, it wasn't as much hindered towards, you know, the pros and stuff like that. So that makes sense with Will Levis. I'm excited to watch some of these quarterbacks. I remember last year's in last year's draft process, we're told how this draft class with quarterbacks is like the greatest we've seen in a number of years. And now everyone's saying, well, wait until next year, right? And it's crazy because just a year ago, we were told that about this class. I still think this is a good quarterback class. I think this is much better than the past 2 years that we've had. Last year, we only had one quarterback on the first round, which was Kenny Pickett. Going to be interesting. The Seahawks, with the 5th overall pick, get Tyree Wilson. I love the pick. Love the guy, love the player. Very quick, very explosive, 6'6", 6'7", around that, 275 to upwards to maybe 285, right? Somewhere in between there. A crazy long wingspan, 86-inch wingspan. He's the guy you want, man, in this class. If you want that next Trayvon Walker player, right? Trayvon Walker is not Will Anderson. Two completely different types of players. But Tyree Wilson is that Trayvon Walker. That's my exact comp for Tyree Wilson. Obviously, we'll see how that pans out. Some people don't like taking those bigger guys that don't have that hand-to-hand combat, the quick first step, right? That super twitchiness. Not saying Tyree Wilson for that size isn't twitchy, but compared to Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson, Anderson moves a little bit better, right? But some people don't like the Trayvon Walkers, the Tyree Wilsons. Some people don't like those guys going high because they don't have the pass rush skills yet. It's more of a development thing. People also say, well, you know, the only guy that's ever really panned out in that mold is Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett is arguably the best defensive end. But then you can look across the board, and there's a lot of guys that are kind of bust with that same mold, right? Jadeveon Clowney never panned out. Cleveland Farrell, although he's a little bit shorter, never panned out. Right? He's still like 6'4", 6'5". Then last year you got Trayvon Walker, and he was good at times, but then at other times, Aiden Hutchinson looked so much better, and you could have gotten Hutchinson. So kind of interesting. At number 6, Devon Witherspoon. I love this, man. This is why certain mock drafts don't make sense and why some do. With the number 6 overall pick, the Detroit Lions take the number 1 cornerback. Most people that watch tape agree Devon Witherspoon is the guy. The guy's very sticky in coverage. He moves very, very well. High process football player. He can tackle. He can do all the things you want out of a cornerback. Devon Witherspoon's the guy that I would want if I'm drafting a cornerback. Now, obviously, a lot of you guys know I am a Raider fan. You guys can see that in the back right there. Although we do cover multiple teams on my second YouTube channel, teams like the Cowboys, the Eagles. We made some Falcons content, plus some other teams. But I would love for the Raiders to get Devon Witherspoon. Right? I think if he fell to the Raiders, that's the guy to have. I don't like this pick. I don't like for the Raiders to get Peter Skronoski. Not that I don't like Skronoski. It just isn't the guy that I want. Personally, I think he loses in a way that tackles should not lose. A way that for a quarterback standing in the pocket, you don't want a guy coming at you in a certain way, right? And for me, when I look at Peter Skronoski, to me, it just doesn't make sense. And I know pretty much all the big mock drafts are mocking Skronoski to the Raiders. I almost feel like it's a lazy way to just say, this is what everyone else is saying. I'm going to just mock this same guy to the Raiders as well. Specifically because Skronoski's not a tackle. He's not going to play tackle in the NFL. And I will stick with it. Look, I think Peter Skronoski is the best college tackle in college at the moment. The guy is very quick, great technique. He has everything going for him, but he's only 6'4", and he's not very strong, right? His wingspan is not very long, and to me, that has caused him issues, and that will continue to cause him issues. As he gets into the league, as he takes on the Trayvon Walkers and the Tyree Wilsons, it's going to cause him issues. And we saw it when he took on Zach Harrison of Ohio State, when he went up against David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson of Michigan last year. We saw it on tape. He was constantly getting pushed back. He wasn't able to anchor down. And to me, that's not the 7th overall pick. If the Raiders want a right tackle, a true starting right tackle, they got Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson, and my favorite, Darnell Wright. They take one of those 3 guys. They have more upside. They're long. They're lengthy. They're going to be able to handle those true pass rushers. Although I personally would want Darnell Wright, and that's the only guy I would take if I'm drafting a tackle. with the 7th overall pick. The other guys are all projections. Now, Skronoski, obviously, if he's able to play tackle in the league, will be a good tackle. I just don't think he's going to be able to do it, my personal opinion. Number 8, got Brian Branch. I'm gonna make a bold statement right here with Brian Branch. Personally, if you want the best non-Will Anderson, non-Jalen Carter, if you want the best guy whose film backs it up, it's Brian Branch. The guy is truly special. You know, he's not some of the guys we've seen out of Alabama in the last couple of years, right? Some of those safeties, guys that end up in the 3rd, 4th round. Brian Branch isn't those guys. Brian Branch is truly special. Brian Branch is the type of guy that's going to get into the league, and you may not even notice him for like 2 to 3 years, because that's kind of what happens with safeties in the NFL. But he's a guy that can play safety, whether it's as a true post safety, right? That middle of the 3rd post safety, as a split safety. He can even play nickel. And when I say he can even play nickel, I'm not talking about he's like, you know, like a C- nickel player. The guy's like a A+ potential nickel player. The guy has superstar potential. He's arguably going to be one of the best safeties in the NFL. The guy can do it all. If he goes 8th overall, I wouldn't be surprised. And it's not just because he's a safety. It's because of that ability to play within the slot. Maybe line up out wide on a Kyle Pitts or a Darren Waller. In my opinion, Brian Branch is going to be very good once he gets in the league. I love it for the Falcons. The Panthers take a quarterback in CJ Stroud. This is interesting because CJ Stroud falling to 9 is not something a lot of people would think. In fact, I know most Raiders fans and Panthers fans would be fired up if CJ Stroud would actually, you know, slip past their picks or at least get to where they're picking. I love it for the Panthers. The Panthers have a good roster, a good team. CJ Stroud puts them over the top, in my opinion. CJ Stroud's the best pocket quarterback, true pocket passer. And Stroud has the ability to make plays, right, with his legs. We saw against Jalen Carter a couple of, like, maybe 2 or 3 different reps. When Carter beat the guy that he was going one-on-one against, went to get the quarterback, and Stroud just rolled right past him, right, in the championship game, right? Not the national championship, but the game right before. Love the pick, CJ Stroud. The Eagles get Christian Gonzalez, and this one's interesting as well because the Eagles are about to win the Super Bowl, and they're picking 10th overall. Or at least they have a shot at the Super Bowl. I shouldn't say they're going to win it, but you get Christian Gonzalez. Love the pick from Oregon. He's a good cornerback in my opinion. Tackles well. Good length, right? For me, that's the big thing. I think he's like 6'2", 6'3". Good length. Moves really well. Very smooth in terms of his ability to change direction. I can dig the pick. Number 11, you got the Tennessee Titans taking Broderick Jones. That's interesting, actually. So this is technically the 2nd offensive tackle taken. Most mock drafts have Paris Johnson ahead of Broderick Jones, but we're seeing that shift a little bit. And personally, I love Broderick Jones. I do think Broderick Jones has one thing that may be a concern, which is also going to be his size. You know, he's a good football player. He is raw, not the longest in terms of his size. But I did watch his tape against LSU, specifically BJ Ojulari. Some people are saying he's a top 64 pick, first 2 rounds. And he did struggle a little bit, right? And I do think he needs to continue to develop. But he did struggle just a little bit. So, you know, I don't know if I would take him with the 11th overall pick and make him the 2nd tackle taken. Again, I would rather have Darnell Wright over all of these guys. I think Darnell Wright is a sure day 1 starter. Day 1, he's going to whoop whoever ass it is that lines up in front of him. But I can see the Titans needing a offensive tackle. Day 1, he would start at left tackle for the Titans. Taylor Lewan apparently is retiring this year. Not 100% sure if that's confirmed. Then the Texans with the 12th overall pick, they get Quentin Johnson. That's an interesting one because I am not sold on Johnson. Not that he's a bad receiver, and I know people hold the national championship game against him where he went up against Georgia. You can't do that when it comes to these guys because one team may be much better than the other, and that's the case with Georgia. Georgia is much better of a team than TCU. So you can't hold that against him. He didn't do anything wrong in that game. He did struggle. He is 6'4", he is 215. I just don't know if I'm sold on him. Personally, I think if you want one of the best receivers, to get the guy that has the production against the top schools. Jordan Addison. Najigba at Ohio State, right? Jackson Smith-Njigba. You take the guys that have beat the best cornerbacks in the country. Not saying that Johnson hasn't done it against some cornerbacks. I just, I don't know. I would be hesitant with him, right? Especially when we've seen former wide receivers in college dominate 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", dominate, and then they get into the league and they're just not the same type of player, right? The competition changes, the game speed changes. But if the Texans do take a wide receiver, I'm all for it. The Jets take Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State. That's interesting because the Jets do have Mekhi Becton, who could play guard technically, right? They also took Elijah Vera Tucker in the draft, who could also play guard and tackle as well. So now they'll take Paris Johnson. So that's kind of interesting. The Jets haven't had a lot of luck on the offensive line. Now, obviously, Elijah Vera Tucker, arguably one of the best guards in the NFL if he's healthy. Mekhi Becton has had a lot of upside, just hasn't been able to stay healthy and pan out. Paris Johnson, project again, right? So I don't know. I don't know what these offense tackles do. Keep in mind, this is kind of a weak offensive tackle class. A lot of people agree with that, right? Tackles, there's guys with upside, but there's not a sure thing, right? Like we had a Penei Sewell and a Rashawn Slater and a Christian Darrisaw come out just 2 years ago. Even last year, it was much better than the current class we have this year. Number 14, the New England Patriots go out and get Mac Jones, Jordan Addison. Love the pick. Some people are concerned with his size. I don't find it an issue. I think size in the NFL is a little overrated for wide receivers. If you're super tall, you may not be as fast, and if you're super short, you may be quicker and more explosive side to side. So I don't think size really matters in the NFL. Sure, I'd probably rather have a 6'1", 6'2" guy that has super quick speed, twitchiness. Yeah, I'd probably rather have that. But Jordan Addison, in my opinion, is still a really, really good football player. I would love the pick for the Patriots. Mac Jones needs help. Help is on the way. The Green Bay Packers take Myles Murphy out of Clemson. I don't love this pick, man. I get it. Myles Murphy falls in that Trayvon Walker, the Tyree Wilson mold, and I get that part of it. I get the thought process. I just don't agree with it, man. I don't know. Again, I get it. Myles Garrett was in the same exact position when he was drafted. I just don't like it. I just think that it's, in my opinion, it's not something that I would do. I would take the sure-handed guy. If you need a defensive end, there's some defensive ends to be had in this class. Myles Murphy, I think, just doesn't flash enough for me, right? He doesn't have the hand-to-hand combat, which is something I look for. You got to have hands that can swipe, that can rip, that can come over the top, right? You got to be able to do it not only on tape, but you got to be able to show us with the production, and Murphy just doesn't have it. I will say the Packers are known to develop talent, so if he goes to the Packers, I think he will develop into a good football player, right? The Commanders take Anthony Richardson. If Richardson falls to pick 16, I would kind of be surprised. But I guess I wouldn't be surprised. And I think the Commanders need a quarterback now. Don't be out with the Commanders and the Jets as well, potentially trading their first-round pick to the Raiders for Derek Carr. It is a possibility. I don't think Derek Carr goes for a first-round pick. I personally think he's going to end up going for like a third. But don't be out on the Commanders saying, let's go with Derek Carr instead of the rookie quarterback, right? So it'll be interesting what they end up doing. The Steelers take my guy, man. This is why I could respect this mock draft, is because for the first time, Darnell, right, at least that I'm seeing, is being mocked by one of these, CBS, PFF, ESPN, NFL Network. For the first time, Darnell Wright gets mocked into the first round, and this right here is a pick that I love. Darnell Wright is the best tackle in this class by a margin, in my opinion. There's no comparison. He's 6'6", great size, great length, and the guy will snatch and trap you. The guy will slingshot block. The guy will do things in terms of fake jump setting and getting back deep into a depth when he pass blocks. The guy does things that are just different, and for some reason, he's continuing to be slept on, right? He's continuing to be slept on, but I think once the Senior Bowl ends, as it comes and goes, I think he's going to be ranked as the #1 tackle. I think he'll get ahead of Peter Skronoski. It's just a matter of time. The Lions take Kalijah Kancey with the 18th overall pick. You guys know how I feel about Kancey. I did a film breakdown on him. Love the pick for the Lions. The Lions have some good defensive ends. They got some good secondary pieces. Maybe they can upgrade the interior defensive line, and I think Kalijah Kancey makes a lot of sense for them. They got some good run defenders. Ali McNeil kind of comes to mind. A couple other guys, great interior defensive linemen. And Kancey gives them that quick pass rush. And I think that right there makes a lot of sense from 14.5 sacks over the past 2 seasons, 22.7% pass rush win rate. Beautiful, man. Absolutely love it. The Buccaneers get O'Cyrus Torrence. If you guys remember, Ali Marpet actually left him, I believe, last year. Before the start of this year, he went to a whole different squad, and it left them without a guard. And then they ended up losing their best offensive lineman, their center Ryan Jensen, and then their right tackle Tristan Wirfs. And that offensive line was super broken up, and Tom Brady was very uncomfortable the entire year. Now they go O'Cyrus Torrence, arguably the best overall offensive lineman in this class. Arguably, I would still say it's Darnell Wright, but O'Cyrus Torrence is right there as well. The guy's going to be a beast, man, at the next level. Love the physicality he plays with. The Seahawks get Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. Love the size, man. He's tall, he's lengthy, can move well for his size. So I think Porter is going to be a really, really good football player. You know, if there's any cornerbacks that I think are sure things, and corners are very hard to predict, I think Joey Porter's the guy. I think the guy's going to be really, really good. The Dolphins' 21 overall pick has been forfeited because apparently they were cheating. Or I should say they're tanking, which is, I guess, a form of cheating. Kind of sucks for them. I don't like it personally. The Chargers take Zay Flowers. You know, Flowers is dominating the East-West Shrine practices. I got the tape, man, and I today I watched every single one of the reps. I think there's been 2. Today was day 3, so there's been 2 practices. The guy's been dominating, man. He's pretty much unstoppable. I think he was like 10 of 10, 10 throws, 10 completions yesterday. The guy's going to be a superstar in the NFL, in my opinion. I think Zay Flowers, and I get it, some people are hesitant with his size. This says he's 5'10". I don't know if that's actually correct. I thought he was shorter than that. I may be wrong, but regardless, I think he gets open, and I think as long as he's able to stay healthy, and he has to kill the combine. His 40 has to be, if it's 4.2, he's a top 15 pick. If it's a 4.3, he's a first-round pick. Anything slower than that, anything in the late 4.3s as well, he may slip to the second round, in my opinion. But he's fast, and his tape kind of backs that up. The Ravens take Deonte Banks out of Maryland. Love the pick. Now, here's where things get kind of interesting with the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are going to take defensive tackle Saiki Ika out of Baylor. The 3rd defensive tackle taken out of this class in this mock. Think about it. I did a video just 2 or 3 days ago where I had 4 guys that I said are first-round projections. They're first-round guys. And Saiki Ika is now the 3rd defensive tackle taken in this mock. The 4th guy, you guys will see it in a second, he ends up going in the first round as well. This defensive tackle class is deep. Maybe as deep as the 2019 one was, where Quinnen Williams, we had, what's his name? Dexter Lawrence. We had a couple other guys. Can't think of the guys. We had a bunch of guys come out, right? There's at least 5 or 6 guys that ended up being very, very, very good. Jeffrey Simmons, another guy, absolute superstar. Dermont Jones at Ohio State went to the Broncos, superstar, not superstar, but top 6'7" defensive tackle. Ika isn't in that same mold, right? He's a 6'4", 355-pound monster. On my Twitter, I'm gonna post some clips of him probably later on today. Love the player, man. Absolutely love it. The Jaguars take Michael Mayer, the first tight end. Some people love this guy, man. I feel like tight ends are the one position where you got to be very careful with. Not saying Kyle Pitts won't work out, but being the number 4 overall pick going before Jamar Chase, I believe he was. Maybe he was the 5th pick, and Jamar Chase went a pick before. Maybe it was one or the other, but he went right after or right before Jamar Chase, and the impacts the 2 guys have had are drastically different. I feel like tight ends are one of those things where a guy could be had in the 2nd or 3rd round or later in the draft, and they may be very good tight ends. And then guys that go in the 1st round, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, may never work out. They may be good football players, but are they worth taking over a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba, who goes to the Giants, literally just a pick later, right? In my opinion, it's just something you have to think about. The Giants get Smith-Njigba, love the pick. The Cowboys get Clark Phillips out of Utah, kind of an interesting pick. I don't know if Clark Phillips is a first-round pick. 5'10", 185. Not the guy that, in my opinion, I would want the Cowboys to personally take. I think the Cowboys could get a linebacker in Trenton Simpson. I think they can get a running back in Bijan Robinson, who is a difference maker, right? But the Bills actually take Robinson with the 20th overall pick. I just don't know if the Cowboys wouldn't be smarter taking Bijan Robinson. But you guys see here, the Bills get Robinson with the 20th overall pick. I do like Robinson a lot. I think he's arguably the best player in this class. But unfortunately for him, running backs just don't go very high, right? So for that reason, he's likely going to end up falling towards the end of the first round. To wrap it up, the Bengals take Darnell Washington out of Georgia, the tight end, 6'7", 6'8", massive football player. I think this would be a major mistake. Personally, I don't see why you take a blocking tight end that high. And sure, maybe if he has more targets, maybe he's better. Maybe he has more upside. But I just don't know at that size if it makes sense to get a player like Darnell Washington in the first round. To me, he's a third-round player, and I get it. He was with Georgia, and he's big, and he's a good run blocker. But if you want a good run blocker, go draft the tackle in the 5th round and put him in as a 6th offensive lineman. A lot of teams already kind of do that, right? The Broncos take Trenton Simpson. In my opinion, Simpson is the #1 linebacker in this class. Love the pick. If the Broncos get him with the 30th pick, kind of reminds me the same way of how last year we had the guy out of Utah, right? Devon ended up falling. I think he went to the Jaguars like 27, 28. Trenton Simpson's the best linebacker in this class. Obviously, there wasn't another linebacker taken ahead of him. Linebackers, there's a bunch of guys that are very similar, but there's no true, this guy's a 100% first-round guy. I do think Simpson's the one guy that I would take with a arguably top 15 to 20 pick. The Chiefs take Bryan Bresee. Love the pick for them. I think Bresee makes a lot of sense. He's big, 6'5", can move okay, although he took a step back this past year. But he's strong, he's physical, and he has some good pass rush technique. I love the pick. I think he's a first-round pick. The Eagles win the Super Bowl, and then they get Lucas Van Ness, 6'5", 275. Great technique from this guy, man. Iowa players, man, have some great technique, and we've seen that in the past. And I think Lucas Van Ness is going to be a pro's pro. I think, and this is my honest opinion, I think this guy is going to be one of the best defensive linemen out of this class. And the crazy part is he didn't even play a lot at Iowa. Like, they literally did not use this guy all that much. And again, I still think he's going to be one of the better defensive linemen. Let me know what you guys think, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.